All right, welcome back in. This is season 6, episode 43 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2024 Sao Paulo GP review show, and you've got Andy, and I'm along with Cody tonight, and we just kind of gave you the appetizer. And now we're going to get into the main course, the actual full Sunday running, all done in wet conditions. And we shall start, as we are apt to do, with the back markers, and there's some significance to these back markers this time. Getting the dreaded DSQ. Not since 2007 have we seen a black flag displayed in an F1 race. We did today. So here's another new thing. Nico Hülkenberg thrown out of the race. We'll explain why in just a little bit. So it's as though he was never, ever there. He gets no lap credits. He gets nothing. He gets no points. And his day was done. The non-classified finishers not even making it to the start line. Ouch. Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. We are going to have to talk about that for sure. The pain for the Williams guys continued. Obviously, we talked about Alex Albon was not going to make the start due to his wreck in qualifying. Franco Colapinto did manage to get 30 laps in, but he crashes out as well. That is 2 cars completely destroyed for Williams. They are in a world of pain. The 3-week break cannot come soon enough for that team. Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, he had a bit of an eventful day. He also gets the dreaded DNF after 38 laps. Your classified finishers start with P15. That would be Zhou Guanyu in the Kick Sauber. Fernando Alonso and the other Aston Martin had, I would say, a very painful day. The bumps affected him quite bad. He did come over the radio saying, I'll finish the race for the mechanics, but I'm in a lot of pain here. I did see some video of him trying to get out of the car. He was clearly not himself. May he get a speedy recovery for Fernando Alonso. P13 was Valtteri Bottas. So with respect to Zhou and Valtteri, who kind of had an uneventful Sauber race, and we'll rely on one of our emailers to give us the update on the Sauber team. Cody, what'd you see here in the back markers?
So if you thought qualifying was crazy, you had to buckle up for the race, because I was already messaging Andy what the hell is going on before the race even started. So this all starts off with the formation lap. Lance Stroll has probably the most embarrassing retirement I've ever seen. He spins out on his own during the formation lap. Now that part I can't fault him for, because the track is wet. You're getting heat in the tires. You're coming to terms with the grip. That part I can understand. And he was lucky enough to spin out onto, he did hit the barrier with his front wing and probably damaged it a little bit, but it honestly didn't look too bad.
Yeah. Now keep in mind, he's already had his car rebuilt from his crash in qualifying.
So, yes, so he's already had work done on the car to get it ready for this. Now, it looks like it's not too bad. Probably, make it back around to the pits, change the front wing, start from the pit lane, do what you got to do. And he was lucky enough to spin out onto, like I said, asphalt next to a gravel pit. And then comes the stupid part, because you can see on TV that there is plenty of asphalt access road for him to get around this gravel pit, to do what he's got to do to get back to the track. And what does he do? Backs it up a little bit. He spins around and he drives straight into the gravel track. And what do you know? He gets beached. It's like I laughed my ass off watching the replay, because it just looks so dumb. And it's like, you knew it was going to happen. Apparently, all the crowd around him when that happened, they were adding to the pain by chanting, God, his name is Drugovich. They were chanting Drugovich, which probably just made him feel even worse about it. But yeah, definitely an embarrassing retirement. Then that leads, go ahead.
I was going to say, so that we've seen guys drop it on the formation lap before. And the normal FIA protocol for that normally is we go around again. We line up on the grid. We get ready. Now, he's beaching himself as Lando is getting ready to get on the pole position, and George is coming in, and the rest of the grid is forming up behind him. And all of a sudden, nobody knew what anybody was going to do, because the 5 lights could come on. They could send them. They could do an extra formation lap. They could do any number of things. There is no set protocol for this kind of thing, which is another problem, maybe.
Definitely.
But anyway, so we get the grid fully forms. The guy at the back is ready to do the green flag bit. And instead of seeing what I would have expected to see, which was an extra formation lap, you get the amber lights come on as opposed to the red lights. Usually there's a delay. When they do an extra formation lap, it's usually the amber lights come on and there's 2 green lights above it that indicates that it's an extra formation lap. And then there's this. Now, this is the other thing. And when you're at a race and you actually see this thing and how small it is, it boggles my mind. We have this incredible technology to communicate. We have radios, we have flashing boards. Formula One is at the pinnacle of technology, but race control official messages come through on a little tiny LED color board that's about 4 feet by 8 feet. It's this little tiny square. I sit right by it at Coda, and I can barely read the damn thing. Let me just tell you that. So, and I'm right on top of the damn thing, and even I have trouble understanding it. But instead of seeing extra formation lap, I think it said start procedure aborted. And so under that situation, apparently what the protocol is everything stops. Mechanics can come back out. You've already done a formation lap, so you can't refuel the car, but you could actually put the fans and stuff back on. And it's basically a redo of the countdown to a formation lap.
Mm-hmm.
But that's normally not what you would expect in that situation. So, but again, because you just see the lights light up, Lando, I think, assumed it was going to be extra formation lap. And it looked like he launched off, and all of a sudden he's going around, and everybody else just kind of followed what he did. And then you ended up with, I think, 6, 7 cars at the back that were all like, we really shouldn't be moving, guys. What do we do? And at that point, race control did come on and send everybody on an extra formation lap.
Yeah,
but because of that, now we have a start infringement possibility. But here's another part of the rule book that we've discovered has a hole in it. There's no clear penalty for that, because I don't think in the history of Formula One we've had a situation like this. Here we are again. Oh my God. It's like every little hole in the rule book, like Swiss cheese, we're finding it and we're burying ourselves in it. So now the whole race goes. We'll talk about where everybody finished in a little bit. But you have this specter of the start thing with all these guys who went, some that didn't, some that did. And then the geniuses at the FIA say, we're going to investigate this after the race. So regardless of even had they called the penalty, you couldn't do anything about it. So this whole race, you have the specter of, I don't know what's going to happen. Because of, again, we found a part of the rule book that didn't happen. Or that had never happened before.
I can kind of understand putting that off to the end of the race, because they didn't know what they were supposed to do about it. Nobody apparently knew what they were supposed to do about it. They're kind of writing the book at this point. And there was so much other crap going on the track during this race. They were probably like, we don't have time for this.
I even thought to myself, and it almost came to full fruition. I said, I think they did that because they want to talk to everybody to hear, what did you hear? What did you hear? What did you hear? Because I don't think it was perfectly clear. It couldn't have been. Mm-hmm. And once they said, we're going to look at it after the race, I said, I bet they're looking to see if they screwed up. And maybe they screwed up and they thought they were going to do extra formation lap and maybe even said that. Now, as it turned out, what they did, the FIA didn't admit to doing anything wrong. Okay. But what ended up happening was Lando and George got €5,000 fines for a start procedure infringement. No sanction penalties beyond that, no penalty points or anything that was awarded. I think it's kind of a wash. Like, yeah, it's against the rule, but, we didn't really communicate well, so this is what we're going to do. Okay, fine. But that didn't come out till like 8 hours after the race ended, which was just the strangest thing. Add to that, in all of this kerfuffle, now when we get into the 10 minutes, and something weird happens at Mercedes. So Mercedes were going to come out and change the sets of tires, which you're allowed to do. And usually when the tires are warm in the blankets, they'll have them at a higher air pressure than technically is legal. And because I think it helps the air, more air you put in the tire, it keeps the temperature in it that much longer. Perfectly legal thing to do, not an issue, no problem. However, what you're supposed to do if you're performing a check on the air pressure is you're supposed to have the tire on the ground next to the car, and you can then, in front of the FIA, let the air pressure out. However, what they did, they screwed up the order, and they put the tire on the car and then went, oh shit, the air pressure, and with the tire on the car, let the air pressure out. That is technically a violation of the technical regulations. Joe Bauer says, I'm referring this to the stewards, and now George Russell and Lewis Hamilton have this hanging over their heads as well.
Now, again,
that ended up in another fine.
This is all happening before the race even starts.
We haven't even started racing yet. We have not even turned a lap in anger yet, and we have all of this specter hanging over it before we even start. So we did not have any certainty as to where anybody was going to finish. Yes. And it just ended up, why we still can find places in a rule book that is very detailed that I've read because I've had to read it. It's not something I like doing, but my God, the fact that we still found things that we didn't know we could find. Can we audit this thing at the end of the season and do some testing on it or something? Because this is ridiculous. This is supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport. We don't look like we don't know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Now, something that was pretty clearly codified in the rules was the reason that Nico Hülkenberg was disqualified from the race.
Yeah.
He has a point during the race where he goes off. The car seems to be dead. It looks like he's going to be out of the race. And suddenly, we see him on camera and he's going again. After, I forget, virtual safety car, something's called out for him. And suddenly he's moving again. And they end up throwing the black flag for him because you see the camera shot cut to it. Some trackside marshals came over and gave his car a little push to get it going the right direction again and getting it going again. That's a big no-no. You're not allowed to have outside help to get the car going again if you can't get it going under, the normal powers. If you as a driver can't get the car going again, you are done. You're out. And so since he had that assistance getting the car going, that is an automatic black flag. And as you said, it has been a long time since it happened.
Yeah, Giancarlo Fisichella in 2007 in Canada, I think they said was the last time we saw a black flag. There was also one I know in 2005 for Juan Pablo Montoya at Canada. I don't know what it is about Circuit Gilles Villeneuve that creates black flags, but those were the last two that I could find. So, another one of those odd things that you almost never see. So, yeah, we had a whole lot of stuff hanging over this race. So we will now get into our midfield. And the midfield was very, very, very active in this race for sure. P12, I would like to say Ollie Behrman got baptized by the rain today in more ways than one. He did not have a very smooth weekend, but he does manage still, despite all of the offs, to come home in P12. Decent showing on the day for Haas. P11, no points for him. This is becoming routine, regardless of the conditions. It seems Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, the timer you'd think would have reached 0 by now, but we're still here. But yeah, no points for him. P10, epic battle, I thought, between Lewis Hamilton and Liam Lawson going at it in the rain. Lewis Hamilton, whose car was not very compliant. He did not have himself a very fun day, but still manages to drag that Mercedes home to get a solitary point on the day. P9, Liam Lawson, elbows out throughout the course of the weekend. He's on this trial. He knows what he's got to do, and he's doing the best that he can here. 2 points for the V-Carb team here. P8, unable to convert the slightly bad qualifying into a better race result. That was Oscar Piastri in the McLaren after having a couple of different spins. Very, very twitchy car all weekend, all day long, and a 10-second penalty for a collision that he had with the aforementioned Liam Lawson that drags him down to P8 on the day. P7, the benefactor of that was Yuki Tsunoda. He moves up to P7 after finishing P8 on the road. So good points for the V-Carb team. P6, championship looks to be pretty much over and done with, all but the math at this point. Lando Norris comes home in P6 after a very, very eventful day for him. I'm sure we will talk about that. P5, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Up and down day. Had some good parts, had some parts where he went off. It seemed like a lot of people had some ups and some downs today. So he only manages to come home in P5, but does get points on the board for Ferrari. P4 turns out to be George Russell in the Mercedes. Again, did lead the race off the start. We'll talk about his ups and downs throughout the day. Again, another guy, some big ups and downs on the day. George Russell bringing it home for Mercedes in P4. All right. Where would you like to dissect this midfield that has so many stories?
My gosh, yeah, there's a lot going on here. So I think we'll just mention it real quick. Again, Oliver Behrman did have a rough race, had some offs. He did end up with a 10-second penalty himself for a collision with, I believe it was Franco Colapinto. I'm not 100% sure on that, but okay. So he did have a collision there. That was fairly early on in the race, and he did get a 10-second penalty for that, even though he seemed to be the one who was worse off from that. But he did finish the race, and that is more than can be said for a lot of drivers this time out. So I think he did the best that he could this time, and he'll be stronger for it in the future. I think the big thing to talk about here, though, is some bad luck, perhaps, for Lando Norris and George Russell. Maybe a combination of poor luck and not the best roll of the dice or decision-making from the team, because as you can see, they started on the front row, and they ended up 4th and 6th. So you got to wonder what happened during all this, and it ended up coming down to a race stoppage. So Russell leads off the line. Not great for Lando's record of maintaining the lead when he gets pole position. But anyway, Russell gets the lead. Lando's following him, and they end up running 1-2 for a while. Further into the race, after a whole bunch of chaos is going on, the rain does pick up, and
God showed up again.
Yes, yeah. And there's tons of standing water on the track. Visibility is getting very poor. Commentators start to talk about, it looks like it's approaching race stoppage territory. And the race had been running for a while at that point. So everyone's out there on intermediates, and those intermediates are getting worn down, and they start getting to that point where the treads get worn out to the point where they're starting to almost turn into slick tires a little bit. When there's that much water on the circuit, that's bad. You really need those treads. So it was getting to a weird point, a difficult point for decision making, where you're trying to guess what the race control is going to do. Are they going to stop the race, give us a red flag, in which case we can take our required tire change? I think in the wet race, there's really not even a required tire change, but the state of the track necessitated it. Okay. So they're wondering, should we wait for the red flag to change the tires, or should we do it now to avoid wrecking? And fortunately for Lando Norris and George Russell, they ended up going in for a tire change under virtual safety car conditions. I believe
this is the Hulkenberg VSC.
Yeah, Hulkenberg head is off. So they changed their tires under that VSC, which is, honestly not a bad time to do it. They had been pulling out a little bit in front of the other cars, and you lose less time when you take a pit stop under virtual safety car versus green flag conditions. So it wasn't the worst decision for them, but you could see on the shots that as they came out of the pits, there was so much water on the track. They were crawling around, and Lando Norris makes probably the slowest overtake of the race that I've ever seen.
He actually get past Russell and all of that. You almost forget that.
But the conditions get so bad that race control decides to issue a full safety car. And during that full safety car, Franco Colapinto crashes. And at that point, I think race control just said, you know what, if they're crashing under safety car, we can't keep doing this right now. We need to wait a little while.
They
issued the red flag.
Yeah. So there was a red flag, but it was the nature of the Colapinto crash that necessitated the red flag. The reason they threw the red flag was not anything to do with the conditions. They seemed, for whatever reason, despite hearing, now again, I'm watching both McLaren onboards. Piastri was on the horn. He was pissed that they were still running in this because he's like, guys, we're all gonna freaking crash if we keep running like this. They then put out the safety car. Colapinto has a spin, destroys his car again. But what was happening there, he hit it through the rear end. He did a full, 180-degree spin. The back end goes into the wall first. He comes back back into the track, and it's leaking oil. That's what caused the red flag. Not anything to do with the rain or anything else to happen. It was the fact that it was leaking oil, and it was good. That necessitated them putting the red flag because they wanted to put the oil dry stuff down. Because the rain, actually, when they put the red flag, was starting to clear off. It was a freak kind of cloud that dumped all of the progress that had been made on the drying track since the start of the race, gone. So, you ended up with now a full wet track again. Certain guys actually did come into the pits to get full wet tires, one of them being Sergio Perez, and a couple others. So we actually saw the full wet tires, which was at that point the tire to be on, but that condition didn't last very long. So then they threw the safety car. Colapinto has a spin. There's oil leaking onto the asphalt. They had to throw the red flag to take care of that. We've talked many times on this show about the red flag rule and the fact that you can go in and change your tires, and they have not seemed to want to address this. And until they do, you're still going to have situations like this. So the top three who had stayed out turns out to be Max Verstappen. Actually, it was Esteban Ocon, Max Verstappen, and Pierre Gasly in that order at that point. Did. So because of that, they get the free change of tires. Conditions were improved. Everybody's out now basically on inters, and they have the high ground of the track position and the clean air. So, yeah, I mean, it's a combination of a strange happening with the Colapinto spin, which is not something you're anticipating. I didn't think it was a strategy blunder. I saw that show up in the post-race, and I'm like, come on, what are you talking about? They had thrown a safety car, not a red flag. And again, I think in the moment it's easy to say, oh, well, they should have anticipated a red flag. No, they shouldn't have, because they've been on the horn for 3 laps when it's at its absolute worst, and they didn't. Now, I can't tell you why race control didn't throw a red flag. I thought they should have, to be honest with you. I was kind of shocked that they didn't. But, yeah, I don't know that I would call that strategy blunder. That's the red, yellow flags in Baku thing. It's bad luck. It's the stuff that happens.
Yeah, it's definitely an element of bad luck there. And, you could look at it as like maybe a good roll of the dice for, Max Verstappen and the Alpine team to decide that they're going to try to, hold on to that track position as long as they can and just see what happens. It could have gone the other way. Had there not been the red flag, they would have been out there all the longer. They might have started to lose track position because of how wet the track was and how old their tires were. There was definitely an element of luck there for them that Lando Norris and George Russell especially came out on the negative side of. As far as the changing the tires under red flag conditions, I don't know that there was really anything in my opinion, to address here, because we've discussed in the past why you really almost have to be able to change tires under red flag conditions, because if you have tire damage or something, they can't make you go out. A lot of times we see after a red flag, a standing start, or, in this case we saw rolling starts, but you have to go out for like a formation lap, or, like a leader lap behind the safety car before you get going again. You can't do that if you happen to end up with like a flat tire or some kind of damage to your tires going into the red flag. So at that point, your decisions are either, well, you're just sorry, you're screwed. Even if you make it back to the pit, you have to retire because we don't let you change tires, or you have to be allowed to change the tires under red flag conditions. On top of that, when we have a race start under wet conditions like we did today, the rule for having a required change of tires to another compound, that goes out the window, because there's only two, wet compounds. There's the intermediates and the full wets. Nobody likes the full wets. Nobody ever uses the full wets. A lot of times the track's not going to be wet enough to require full wets anyway. So that need for a different compound goes away when you start under wet conditions like this. So yeah, I don't really think that there was anything to address there. It just was a result of the conditions of the race that this happened to fall in the lap of some drivers and not others.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm not here saying this is a conspiracy. This is not a conspiracy. Not that. That's not my argument at all. I just wanted to make it clear that what caused the red flag, because it seemed like there was a lot of confusion, like in the post race, where like everyone was making the leap to say, well, they should have known a red flag was coming. No, they shouldn't have, because there was no indication that they were going to stop the running until something happened that made it stop. And the thing that made it stop was the Calapinto spin with the oil on the track. So, we've seen throughout history, there have been teams that have benefited from the not having to make a full pit stop versus not. Could and I'm not advocating in a big way for it, but you could say, okay, well, you take, like, if you have damage, you can get a waiver that you can change a tire or something like that. And you can then do a formation lap, let everybody who wants to come in and change tires do that, and then go back out and do either your standing or your rolling start. Now, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. I just know that, this is, again, one of those rules that if you happen to benefit from it, you really benefit from it. And if you happen to not benefit from it, you don't. It's just kind of one of those things. And given the fact that I saw Oscar Piastri almost bin it going into the pits on his worn set of intermediate tires, and that I don't think TV even picked up, he was about that close from binning it really bad going into the pits. I saw it, and that was one of my, I was like, whoa, 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 as I'm watching it take moments. And then even just trying to watch people get in and out of the pits in general, it was clear that it was time to change those tires. Whether or not the Alpines or the Red Bulls would have in another a lap or two, we'll never know. It's one of those things, like I said, we'll never know. But they're the benefactors of it. So, kudos to them for sticking it out and having enough grip to stick it out when that did happen. All right, so the part of this podium might have been predictable, but part of it certainly wasn't. So here's your podium, and this is not a lie. This is real. P3, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. P2, Esteban Ocon in the other Alpine. That's right. I said a double podium for Alpine. P1, from P17 on the grid to a win, running away with it. He's 19 seconds in the lead. Probably, if this is a championship drive, I don't really know how else to describe it. Max Verstappen in the Red Bull comes home, setting fast lap after fast lap, 26 points on the day. But amazing scenes again for Alpine. I don't know what it is about Brazil, but Pierre Gasly, what did we just do? They just got on the podium, baby. And Esteban Ocon He's going to Haas, but why not? Wait till you see what this does to the point standings in the constructors. Holy Hannah. Ayo Korematsu's bad dream comes to life. In you're like, you gotta I the fortunes of going up and down. I think I heard someone say this could be a $50 million swing for Alpine. Talk about a home run. My God, my God. For a team that's struggled and a team that's had some really ugly times, this has got to be a shot in the arm for sure for them.
Yeah. Throughout this whole weekend, there were flashes of good performance from both Alpine drivers. And it all came together in the Grand Prix here because they stuck it out, trying to stay out on their stint as long as possible, seeing if they could have something go their way. The red flag comes out. They've got the track position. Esteban Ocon is actually leading the race. And then they go back out on fresh rubber. They're probably not going to have to make a tire change unless absolutely necessary for the rest of the race. So at this point, it's just trying to hold on to what they got. And after that restart, the first restart, Esteban Ocon was actually doing a good job of holding the lead. He actually pulled out away from Max Verstappen a little bit.
It was like 3 seconds at one point.
Yeah, and it looked like holy crap, like maybe Max is gonna just take what he's got and let it ride out, and we're gonna get a freak win from Alpine. And that didn't end up happening. We did get another safety car when Sainz crashed out, and on that restart, Max Verstappen made an awesome move up the inside right at the first turn on Esteban Ocon and pretty much ran off with it from there. But yeah, I was telling you over text that I was going to eat my hat if we saw an Alpine win or an Alpine double podium. And I was thinking for sure, yes, it's wet. No, there's no DRS. But these are the Alpines. We've got George Russell and Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris all behind them. Surely they're going to get by them. And no, George Russell tried. He was hanging pretty close to Pierre Gasly for most of the rest of the race. But no, they amazingly held on, both of them, to the lower two podium positions. And man, that Alpine team was losing their minds for the podium celebrations. It was awesome to pass down the champagne to the team. They were all taking their chugs. It was really nice to see. And as you said, this is a massive points swing for them. They were 9th place in the constructors with less points than they got in this race. And so just total bounce back for their fortunes. And it was really nice to see. I think, though, at least in my opinion, very proud to be wearing this hat today. I think the main story for this podium is Max Verstappen, who had, I think, one of his best drives of his career thus far. I think we're going to look back on this one in the future as one of his greats, one of the greats. Started in 17th position and managed to make it back to win the race by, as you said, almost 20 seconds. Is incredibly impressive. Now, he did have a little bit of luck to go his way with that red flag, as we discussed, and being able to effectively get the free tire change. That said, he was tearing up the field. He got 5 positions gained on the first lap alone. Was picking off people left and right throughout the whole first stint of that race until we got to the red flag. And then after that second restart that we talked about, pulled past Esteban Ocon with a really great overtake on the inside and was just setting fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap for pretty much the rest of the race. It was making it look easy. Pulled out a massive gap on the Alpines and took a well-deserved win. I had said before that I think this championship, Drivers' Championship, would be more or less over if we saw another Max Verstappen win or Lando Norris retirement, and we got the Max Verstappen win today. And while it is not rock solid and officially in the books yet, I do think it's pretty safe to say that the Drivers' Championship is over after this.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The math was a hard thing for Lando anyway. I think I've been saying even since Monza, don't make this out to be any more than what it really is. That Max could have taken 2 races off and Lando could have won and gotten fastest lap and wasn't going to get there anyway. So, and the fact that everybody just assumes, oh, McLaren has a fast car now, so they should just win everything. It's hard to win in this business, man.
Mm-hmm.
And Max knows that now because he's gone several months between tasting the champagne on the top step. But my hat's off. I tip my cap fully and correctly because this effort was you just watched to watch it on timing. It looked like he was just he would look like he was driving something that everybody else did not have, and whether that's the car, which I think is part of it, but I also think it's just his talent in this type of condition. That we talked about at certain points when we have a drying track where the honey hole is. Well, his honey hole was full on wet because the first lap where he's finding grip where nobody else could ever even think to try to place their car just shows you that he was on it. And I saw after the first lap he's up to 11th. I said, yeah, that's probably doesn't bode well for the rest of this one. So you knew he was going to factor into it. My only regret is we didn't see an actual battle for it, but I don't think, given where it was happening to Lando, and McLaren made a rear wing change based on the wet conditions, which I didn't think helped them out because the things that helped them in the dry was they had brought a rear wing that didn't have the mini DRS controversy around it, but it definitely did help their draggy problem. The McLaren car this year has always been great in the slow, twisty bits, but really not so good in the straight. What that wing in the dry was doing was helping them. Their best sector, believe it or not, was sector 3, which is where you're all flat out going through the main part of the lap. When they changed the wing and the conditions changed, that advantage went away. And it's really hard to try to make up lap time in the twisty bits when you really only had one reasonable lane of running because new surface, wet track, all of that. But I give it to full props to Max for being able to find other lanes and find other places of grip. Even if you don't have the red flag intervention, he would have been a factor in this race. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Given where the pace of that thing was, it was just a question of, would they have squabbled over things and could it have ended in tears for one, if not both of them? But yeah, I mean, tough day at the office for the McLarens, but I'm buoyed by the fact, again, I never thought, and I've been consistent, I never thought this was a real drivers' championship fight. The math was always against Lando. The fact is, they didn't come onto the scene until race 6 of the season. And to try to pull that out, I admire the attempt. I'm glad that we had it. It's been a real fun ride, but look, I mean, it just probably wasn't in the cards this year. And unless Max has some sort of a major moment moving forward in these last 3 races, it's not going to happen this year, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. My focus on this race was actually the constructors, and believe it or not, McLaren actually extend their constructors lead slightly against the Ferraris. So that was my big focus on this weekend. I kind of said, you know what, it's Max's to win, especially once the conditions changed. I said as soon as that epic rain hit, I went, well, all right, at least we got it up. We got it done in the sprint. Maximize that. You never know what's going to happen in the rain, and Max is awesome in the rain. So yeah, fair play. Great drive. I mean, like I said, I knew on the first lap, like he's up 6 positions. I said, oh, okay. And it's purple on the timing. And it's just, he's doing things that just other people can't do. And that is the brilliance of this guy, whether you like or don't like him. And again, I'm also consistent about this. You have to respect the talent. That's the talent you saw.
I did start to get a little nervous about the Drivers' Championship after the sprint race and then the way qualifying went, because I figured, even if Max manages to gain half the places, he's still going to lose a big deficit to Lando if he can manage to win the race. And yeah, that all got turned on its head by the end. That's not to say that Lando didn't drive a good race. He did make a few odd mistakes here and there. Overall, did a great race though. Just couldn't keep it going as quickly in the wet as Max Verstappen, and just had a little bit of luck go against it.
And all right, I think that's where we will leave this. So, what a race! Like I said, this thing had, I think, a taste of everything. Mm-hmm. Why do we follow this sport? Because you get a taste of everything. So we're going to take another break. We're going to re-rack. We will now recap what this does to those standings, the drivers, the constructors. The constructors look massively different at certain places than they did before we started this round. And if you had Alpine double podium and you had bet that, you should be like throwing the champagne around Las Vegas today, man, because holy Hannah, what a call for that. Because I did not see that one coming. But anyway, we're going to come back. We're going to talk about that. We're going to then open it up to your thoughts on this weekend. We've got some good comments in here. Fan email segment. We'll hand out some awards. I do have a lot of things I want to throw in the rubbish bin. None of them involve, well, some of them involve Max, but none of them involve him personally. Let's put it that way. And then we'll talk about predictions. Not as rough as it's been. We both definitely scored points. We both had some good moments there, so we'll talk about that. And then we'll cue what this last triple header of the season is actually going to be, where we're going. Las Vegas is beckoning, odd times, race starting at midnight, 2 a.m. times all over again. I guess we'll be all here for it. So come on back. We'll get into all that in just a little bit.